Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. After I was able to win the last two 3-player games, I have now a solid position in the standings again, being only 2 points behind Eske, who is in the lead at the moment, also 2 points behind ciufile, but he has already one more game finished. And the next game that we are seeing today is a 3-player game against Eske and ciufile, and it will be extremely important because all of the 3 players are completely in the running to win the group and with that continue in the tournament. So it's an extremely important game. Ideally, I will be able to win it. And yeah, now without further ado, let's take a look at the game. In this game, I'm playing in the first position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we have some lab and science node in H3 with Bill Gates, Einstein, also Marie Curie with the spaceflight, Manhattan Project, the internet. We have also Fleming and Marlene Dietrich, but there is no Hollywood. There's also Churchill for the military, there's the Red Cross in the game, Pierre is in the game as well. In H2 we have Suez Canal plus Cook, so there's some colonization payoff. There's no ocean liner service, no Harvard College. We have some culture leaders, or actually only one with Shakespeare. We have, or maybe also Darwin. We have then Nobel. We have 2 military action leaders with Robespierre and Napoleon, and we also have James Watt together with the railroad. In H1 we have no military action leader. Barbarossa can help with the strength. Genghis Khan as well. We have Leonardo and Gutenberg, and then we have Eleanor, Isabella, also Barbarossa, who can all be interesting for a colonization game. We have both the Universitas and Silk Road. We have Demichi Castle and also St. Peter's Basilica. Here in first position, I made a decision to just go for the rich land, making the decision to not commit to any leader or wonder yet. I could, of course, just take Alex, maybe that could be fine. The thing is that there are some very interesting wonders from HA that aren't revealed yet, but it could be revealed. The Library of Alexandria, Pyramids and Stonehenge, all of them I would prefer over the wonders that are on the row. And then it's maybe fine to take the rich land now, go for leader at the next turn just for standard stuff, electing leader, building a mine, increasing population, hoping that then in 2 turns one of those wonders will be available and it will be possible to take one of them to then have a solid leader and wonder setup. And I just felt like that I would probably prefer a leader like Sun Tzu over Alex if he's available for 1. Maybe I would also prefer Confucius for 2, and that could also be an interesting leader to go for at my next turn. So I just preferred those potential other leaders options, especially also with the colonization game being possible over having Alex, but just going for Alex could maybe also be fine. Maybe going for Hanging Gardens and then one of those leaders could be fine as well. But with those interesting wonders, I didn't want to commit to a wonder, and I just thought that the leaders that I can get at the next turn, if I now don't commit to Alex, are maybe a bit more interesting than Alex. ciufile will go for Urban Growth and Alex, a very fine first pick. And Eske is actually going for the Colosseum and also the patriotism. I mean, with there being a colonization, some colonization synergy in the game, the third military action can definitely be very viable. Also, there's no military action leader in H1. Now it is my turn, and it's a bit of a decision. Do I want to go for one of those leaders for 1 civil action, or am I actually willing to pay an additional civil action for Confucius? And maybe I should just go for Sun Tzu. There are some strong players who really make Sun Tzu work very nicely, but in this situation I felt like the leader or the wonder that I will be getting at my next turn is then Stonehenge or Library, an economical wonder. ciufile has already Alex, an additional yellow token. Eske has the Colosseum. Both of my opponents have maybe a little bit of help for the military and also for colonization, Eske with the additional military action that he will be getting. And maybe it could be fine to just go for Sun Tzu, seed some preferable events into the deck, but at the end I was willing to pay the 1 additional civil action to just get science when I seed those events into the deck. Of course I have less events to choose from. Maybe I should just go for Sun Tzu and not pay the additional civil action here, but especially with being in first position, it's not that rarely the case that at the next turn, at the third turn, there is not that much to do anyway, which at the end was then again another reason why I was willing to pay the additional civil action now to have a leader that I prefer even more. I elect him and I build a third mine. I draw a colonization card in the fighting band tactic. ciufile goes for Alex, builds the second lab, increases his population and takes the rich land that he can use to build his third mine at the next turn. There is also interestingly a very early Silk Road coming down the row. Eske is going for Hippocrates, chooses him over Cleopatra and then builds the third mine. Lets the engineering genius stay on 2 civil actions for me. Now it is my turn. As you can see, I see the colonization card into the deck. Of course, it hurts a little bit. Maybe you can also just see the tactic, but I think just having a tactic is quite nice, and otherwise things can potentially get a bit awkward. There is no Jan Žižka. I think with Jan Žižka in the game, I would definitely keep the tactic. Like this, it's definitely a bit of a decision, especially with all the colonization payoff. Maybe keeping a colonization card in hand could be important, but at the end I made a decision to seed the colonization card into the deck and instead keep the fighting band tactic. The event revealed is the development of warfare. Sadly, I don't have a free population. One of the disadvantages of having taken Confucius for 2 civil actions, so I can't take a free warrior. I will then increase my population. I will also build a second lab now. And then this turn I have to make a decision which wonder do I want to go for. Do I want to go for one of those wonders that are available for 1 civil action, for example library or Stonehenge, or am I willing to pay an additional civil action to get the Silk Road, a wonder that I really like? And also, depending on my choice, ciufile has then some options available. If I go for either Stonehenge or library, here's the option to go for Silk Road for 1 civil action. And I felt like, for him, of course, getting Silk Road for 1 civil action is not bad, but Alex doesn't give the civil action back when he's replaced, and also ciufile has actually this rich land available, can go for something like Library and Engineering Genius, so I felt like if I go for the Silk Road, or I felt like the Library, together with the Engineering Genius, might even be preferable for ciufile over the Silk Road, just because he can finish it very clinically, just taking Library, Engineering Genius, building the mine, and at the next turn immediately finishing the Library. With that, I felt like I don't necessarily have to go for the Silk Road as a denial, but the question is, how strong do I evaluate it for myself? And it was a very close call. I think going for either of those 3 wonders could be fine. At the end, I actually went for the Silk Road, just because I think the wonder is very strong. The economical benefits plus the culture reduction that you will accumulate passively is just a very nice package. Having now some civil actions to spend nicely during the early turns, and then hopefully finishing it relatively soon, I just valued relatively highly, but just taking library and then either building a step or increasing population could also be perfectly fine, maybe even takes the potentially better option away from ciufile. So it was a very close call for me. At the end I went for the Silk Road. I will draw 2 cards, the new deposits and another copy of Fighting Band Tactic. If I would have known that, of course I would have seeded the Fighting Band Tactic instead of the colonization card, but of course I didn't know that. ciufile will go for the library, takes the Engineering Genius, will take the free warrior, will use Alex to still have a free population, a happy population to be able to put into mines. I think a very nice start having that free warrior. At the next turn being able to finish the library immediately. Only downside for him is that he passes on the chance of maybe taking one of those military techs, but there will be maybe some other ones later on available. Now it's Eske's turn. He's willing to actually go for Isabella for 2 civil actions, also takes the knights and increases his population. Isabella allows him to replace Hippocrates relatively quickly to immediately get some value out of a leader, and I mean, together with having a 3rd military action, Isabella can maybe potentially be the start of a nice colonization game with strong Suez and Cook as payoff cards later on. This turn I then seeded a Fighting Band Tactic into the deck, as I didn't want to commit to new deposits, especially now that Eske has taken Isabella, and with me not knowing when I will get iron and if I will get iron. I opened the development of Civil Life. I can use that to increase my population. That allows me to increase my population again, which is very nice, because then I'm already out of corruption and I can use 3 civil actions to my liking. And there are actually some very interesting cards available. There's the Masonry on the row. There is a copy of Alchemy, and there's also Monarchy. I have some additional signs from Confucius, so I felt like all of those cards are nice, but do I want to take all of them, or do I maybe want to take 2 of them and then build a step of the Silk Road or something? At the end, I made a decision to just take all of them, because I think the Masonry is almost a must pick, with me having the Silk Road as first wonder. Then also, with having the Silk Road, getting more civil actions as quickly as possible is just very strong, so the Monarchy I think is also quite strong. And also, when we take a look again at the leaders from H1, there's no leader who gives an additional military action, so the military action from the Monarchy might be especially valuable. And when you have the Masonry already anyway, then those very cheap upgrades to Alchemy I think are also very strong. There's Leonardo in the game as a potential leader that I might be able to go for later on, and with that I just spent all the civil actions to take Masonry, Alchemy and the Monarchy. The question is, which copy of Monarchy do I want to take? I could of could take the right one. That would mean that ciufile doesn't have access to the monarchy. Maybe that's nice because he will also soon have some additional science production when he finishes the library. Then maybe investing into monarchy could be nice for him. So maybe it's nice to take it away. On the other hand, if I now take the monarchy, the bread and circuses fall down to 1 civil action instead of staying on 2. There's Pierre in the game, there's Darwin in the game, so it's a strong arena game. Maybe I should rather let it stay on 2 civil actions for ciufile, but at the end I just went for the monarchy denial. With there being no military action leaders, maybe the monarchy is more valuable, and it could still be a nice card for ciufile to get. He can maybe develop it in 2 turns when he now finishes the library. And so I took at the end the right copy, but that of course means that now the bread and circuses will be available for cheap for him. Now I will draw some cards to develop territory and a phalanx tactic. ciufile seeds and opens the development of markets. He will take additional food from the development of markets, but thanks to the engineering genius still has enough resources to finish the library immediately. And as last pick he will indeed choose the bread and circuses to have a happy face solution and to open up the option to go for leaders like Darwin and Pierre later on. Eske seeds and the development of religion is revealed, maybe making that bread and circuses pick a little bit less good for ciufile. I have a free population, so I was mainly happy to see this event. Eske will now this turn elect Isabella, doesn't bother about the 3rd Hippocrates token, takes the free warrior, but he can only do that when he then finishes the Colosseum. Or actually no, the free warrior was already the turn before. This time he used the development of civil life to actually build the 2nd HA lab, and then he didn't have a free population, so he finishes the Colosseum, is interestingly willing to skip the free temple in order to build that lab, but with having the happy face from the Colosseum, maybe that's not the most important. Maybe he can take the 2nd copy of bread and circuses or something later on. So he finishes the Colosseum, and then he picks the irrigation, a card where we have already seen in some games before that he is definitely valuing that relatively highly. Now it is my turn. I have some different events that I could potentially push. I didn't like any of those too much. I didn't want to see any of the tactics, and I also definitely didn't want to see the colony because Eske has a 3rd military action now, has Isabella, so I just at the end see that the new deposits, as I wanted to get the additional science from Confucius. The development of trade routes are revealed. Before the development of trade routes were revealed, I thought about actually going for a turn where I develop the masonry and then go for 2 upgrades to alchemy, but now that doesn't as easily get me out of corruption. I think I could still go for maybe I think I maybe would have gone for 1 upgrade, increasing my population. I'm not entirely certain, but I think that event did change my plans a bit, and now after that being revealed, I just went for developing the masonry and then just finishing the Silk Road, increasing my science production, my culture production, and from now on being able to use the yellow cards with a bonus. I was hoping that maybe Leonardo could be available still at the next turn. That would allow me to go for a very big science boost. I discard the colony, keep the 2 tactics, I draw the open borders agreement and the reign of terror. ciufile seeds, and the event revealed is actually the vast territory. So you can see I pass. Of course I would love to win this colony, but I have only 1 warrior, the others will bid more anyway, and so maybe like this I can hide a little bit that I have no colonization card in hand, but obviously that's also a hint that I don't have a lot of cards. So at the end Eske is able to win it, and he maybe also gives a hint here that he has no colonization cards. Instead of maybe paying a card and 1 resource, he's able to, or he's willing to pay 3 resources in order to win the colony. Maybe he's wanting to save his cards, but I do think that might be a big indicator that he actually has no colonization cards in hand. ciufile takes the free religion, goes for Gutenberg, takes the printing press in hand with Gutenberg, increases his population, builds a warrior and reveals the legion tactic. Also takes the frugality with his last civil action. Sadly that means that Leonardo will be discarded, meaning he won't be a leader option for me. Eske this turn seeds, one of my Confucius events is revealed. He will go for the Code of Laws, develops it, is now relatively low in science, but has the crucial 5th civil action going. Then he will increase his population 2 times, 3 times, and interestingly, as we can see, he has 2 resources. He could build a warrior, but he doesn't, and after him spending 3 resources in the colony, Maybe if he doesn't have a defense card, it is a bit greedy to not build his warrior. Maybe ciufile could try an aggression, but of course he also has the chance to draw some new colonization cards. So he doesn't build a warrior, either has one already or is hoping to draw one, or maybe hoping that ciufile doesn't have an aggression anyway. This turn I'm not certain if I maybe make a mistake here when I see it, because I put the Reign of Terror into the deck, hoping that maybe I will be able to avoid being the weakest, but I won't take those knights this turn. And then I might be able to get the last copy of Swordsman. Maybe I will either get Saladin or maybe use Genghis Khan to get some more strength going, but the event could be revealed relatively quickly, and at the moment I don't have the best way to avoid being the weakest, and with that I think putting a Reign of Terror into the deck could just hurt me a lot when that event will be revealed. Maybe I should either just get rid of one of those tactics if I don't go for knights, maybe from the phalanx tactic. On the other hand, there is still Genghis Khan, so keeping a knight's tactic in hand definitely has some advantages. Maybe I could discard a fighting band tactic aiming towards copying the Legion tactic at some point, or just put the Open Borders Agreement into the deck as a Confucius event, or offer that to one of my opponents. Maybe Eske having an additional military action could help him a lot to set up a strong colonization game. He has already won the first colony. ciufile is only 2 military actions, so of course it could be strong to offer it. Maybe I could also just push it into the deck. My thinking was that I want to keep those 2 tactics. I want to keep the Open Borders Agreement in hand so that I can offer it as soon as I don't have Confucius any longer. I don't need a 3rd military action very urgently, and so at the end I push the Reign of Terror, but I do think it's just definitely possible that I will end up being the weakest, and with that I think it's unnecessary pushing this event, and either I should offer the Open Borders Agreement to someone or just seed one of the neutral or one of those events as a Confucius event. This turn I have a bunch of science saved up, so I will develop the monarchy. I will actually go for the alchemy, go for 1 upgrade. I could go for a second one, but I don't do this. Instead, I build a warrior and reveal the fighting band tactic. First of all, I didn't have a colonization card in hand, so there's the possibility at least that ciufile could try an aggression against me if I don't increase my strength, and also there could be some strength events coming, so having now a little bit of additional strength I think is not bad, and also that allows me to get out of corruption while still having 2 civil actions left, meaning that I can actually go for this copy of Code of Laws that is in the row. Yeah, the next turn when I seed with Confucius I have enough science to develop that, then I will be operating on 6 civil and 3 military actions. I will be on 4, maybe even soon 5 science production. I have the Silk Road that I can soon use, maybe to get some bonuses from some yellow cards going, maybe also to generate some more resources. I have already a decent amount of culture production, so overall I felt like my position might be going into a strong and interesting direction here. I could have also taken a knights instead of the Code of Laws, but there's still a copy of Swordsman left, and also the possibility to go for Genghis Khan, and with that I rather wanted to have the Code of Laws, as it will just be very nice to invest my science into that. And also if I don't take it, then ciufile has a lot of science saved up and would very happily go for it. At ciufile's turn, you can see that Eske does actually get punished, gets hit by a blunder here. ciufile will take 1 resource and 2 food away. With that is able to increase his population 2 times now, and now Eske maybe should have built a warrior. I can't really argue, I'm also a very greedy player, but with the bid and with him paying 3 resources, he somewhat showcased that he probably doesn't have a defense card in hand, and ciufile has actually the aggression to punish him. Builds the knights now, goes up to 7 strength, maybe hoping that he can maybe even go for more aggressions, or just wants to get some strength in, or maybe to get out of corruption. Eske will build, go for a knight, builds 2 actually of them, and reveals the medieval army tactic, meaning both of them are now at 7 strength, and I was now relatively unhappy about me putting the Reign of Terror into the deck, with both of my opponents being at 7 strength now. Eske is willing to take this copy of Iron for 2 civil actions, is relatively low in science for now, but with the cultural heritage can maybe go for the Iron somewhat soon. Now it is my turn, and I again... Or no, I think this time I actually put the Phalanx tactic into the deck, because this copy of Swordsman is coming down the row. I was hoping to go for that at the next turn, and I was not planning to go for Genghis Khan, but rather just go for Saladin. If I really need the strength, I can also get 2 strength from Saladin, but otherwise just get the civil actions, especially with the Silk Road having even more civil actions to work with, I think is quite strong. Genghis Khan definitely an option here, but at the end I also didn't really want to put the raiders into the deck, and I also still wanted to get the science from Confucius. So I pushed this event into the deck, the new deposits are revealed. I will develop the Code of Laws this turn, I go for upgrading a lab, I will increase my population 2 times to get out of corruption, and then I will take both copies of Rich Land. I think both of those are just extremely strong for me. I can use them with the Silk Road bonus either to get the second copy of Iron going very quickly, or maybe to make it a lot easier to get into coal and to get those coal upgrades going in quickly. So I think that is just a very clean turn, and I have now 5 science production, 3 culture production, and hopefully will be able to upgrade my resource production soon. I'm behind in strength, and sadly this turn I do a bit of a blunder. No, that will have some consequences. Because that I think the turn that I did here is completely solid or quite clean, but I think I should just build a warrior here. I mean, I had talked about Eske playing it a bit greedy, and now I basically am doing the same, because I will actually not build a warrior. And I remember that I played this turn while being on a train, maybe played it a bit too quickly. I actually had enough time to think about it, but I think I thought about building a warrior. But the thing is, when you have 3 military actions, I often have this basic mindset of, if I only need 1 defense card, the opponent won't try an aggression anyway, and you shouldn't go out of your way to make sure that you can defend yourself. And I do think that is often true. I don't think you should, if you have no defense card, but you have drawn some cards, you have 3 military actions, you would only need 1 to defend. I often think it's perfectly fine to just don't bother about it, instead focus on upgrading your economy or get some important stuff going that you want to get going, instead of getting out of your way to maybe make sure to have enough strength. So I do think that is, as a general concept, not wrong, but in this situation I just used that concept without really thinking about it, and if it even applies to the situation, because here I do think it's just a big mistake to not build this warrior. It might just get unpunished, but first of all, I can just build this warrior. It's not really preventing me from doing anything. I could just build 1 warrior and then I would be safe from an aggression. At the next turn I thought I might want to go for swordsman, then I could build a swordsman directly if I don't build a warrior now. But the benefit from not, if I now build a warrior and then upgrade it to a swordsman, the only thing that I'm losing is 1 H1 draw. And 1 H1 draw is not really worth a lot. So the things that I'm gaining from taking this risk to not build this warrior are actually not existent, while there are actually some indicators that I don't have the most colonization cards. I passed on the vast territory bit earlier on, and that is definitely an indicator that I maybe don't have a colonization card available, that I maybe want to hide it. Additionally, there is not even the danger of only 1 but 2 aggressions, especially if ciufile should try an aggression and it actually goes through, or even if it doesn't go through, but I maybe draw a colonization card, maybe I'm lucky and I'm able to defend. But then Eske, if he also has an aggression, could also go for an aggression, so there is even an even higher risk than just getting hit by 1 aggression. And with that I should just build 1 warrior, maybe even 2, but I think 1 is already enough to make it that my opponents won't play an aggression against me. And no, I'm not gaining anything. I can't get any productions going in quicker. I don't get, I just, one thing that I would be missing out on when I build this warrior is 1 H1 draw. But because of this basic mindset that I'm sometimes having of, I have 3 military actions, I only need 1 defense card, let's just play like I have this defense card and be fine with it. I do think most of the times this can be the correct play, but in this situation I'm just not gaining anything by taking the risk of potentially getting hit by a double aggression. So sadly I ended my turn too quickly here. I do remember that after I ended a turn I thought, wait a minute, wasn't it maybe just a bit safer to build this warrior? Let's hope it doesn't get punished, because as you can see I actually don't draw a colonization card. But as you might already think, I actually did get punished here, because ciufile goes for raid against me, destroys one of my alchemies. If I want to rebuild it, it costs me 1 civil action and 5 resources. That's a very big setback, while ciufile on the other hand gets 3 additional resources and will use that to invest into the St. Peter's Basilica. At least he will have corruption at the end, but maybe he would have had corruption even when he wouldn't have gotten the 3 additional resources from this aggression. So that was just completely unnecessary, and I was of course quite unhappy about it. The bad thing is that now that ciufile went for the successful aggression, Eske has the knowledge that he also can go for one. If he has an aggression in hand, he can now go for it against me. So I was very worried that he also will have an aggression available. First of all, h2 will start. I will lose Confucius, scoring 1 additional science. And as you can see, sadly, Eske also has an aggression available. Yeah, so yeah. I sadly get very heavily punished here, and was of course quite a bit frustrated about it. Eske will play the cultural heritage this turn, will actually build an additional farm, a move that we have also seen from him before. He will increase his population, builds a second warrior, is now 10 strength, still quite threatening. Maybe he has even another aggression in hand. Now it is my turn again, and I will actually offer the open borders agreement, but before I did anything at this turn, I just needed to let some time pass to not do play this turn with being a little bit tilted. Because of course that was completely unnecessary, getting hit by those 2 aggressions, and I was of course very frustrated and unhappy about it, but the game is still running. I still have my 6 civil and 3 or now even 4 military actions. I will rebuild this alchemy. I still have my 5 science production running. I still have my Silk Road. So of course my position would be a lot better if I wouldn't have gotten hit by those aggressions, but my position is still fine to play. If someone would show me those positions and I would not know that I have gotten hit by some unnecessary aggressions, I maybe would still say that I have a very solid position to play. So I just needed to stop thinking about what just happened and regain focus on just playing. I do think it's important to have the right mindset here, because it's very easy to just get frustrated, tilt, and maybe play the turn unfocused, while actually the position is maybe still somewhat fine. ciufile has only 4 civil actions, doesn't have a lot of production running, will now get some Gutenberg activations, definitely doesn't have a bad position, but my position, I think, is definitely very fine compared to his. In Eske is relatively low in science, will fall behind in culture a little bit, so my position is still fine to play. So I let some time pass to not be tilted about it, and tried my best to just forget about what just happened and try to just focus on the game normally again, not get tilted or anything, and just play on. But of course I was very frustrated about those 2 unnecessary aggressions that I could have very likely prevented by just building a warrior, and something that I might have done anyway. And now the turn later, maybe building it as a swordsman directly. I, at the beginning of my turn, offered the open borders agreement. It was the question if I should actually offer it. I can't really offer it to Eske, because then I have actually some issues to not be in danger of an aggression, because one thing that I definitely wanted to do is to rebuild this lab. I just want to get the science production running again so that I can easily get into coal and maybe also some other crucial technologies. And then if I then have this work available in the alchemies and want to spend the resources on rebuilding it this turn, then if I want to be safe from an aggression, I can't allow Eske to have a +2 bonus against me. So if I want to rebuild this lab, the only player that I can offer the open borders agreement to is ciufile. But the question was, do I even want to offer it to ciufile, because he had only 2 military actions and will now get a 3rd one. So the benefit that he is getting from this might be bigger than what I'm getting from it. But the thing is, I will use some military actions this turn. I might potentially use some at the following turn. And with that, I thought I will still get some draws out of this, and it hopefully will still also be beneficial for myself. And at the end, I was willing to offer it to ciufile, as maybe he gets a bit more out of it than I do, but I might still get some value out of it, which is nice for me compared to Eske's position. So I offer this pact. I will go for Saladin. I will go for the swordsman to increase my strength. I will only go for some upgrades so that I have still just 5 resources left to build this second lab, going up to 5 science production, again allowing it to, if there is an early coal available, having enough science to go for that immediately. Thanks to the Silk Road bonus, I can go for an upgrade even without having to play the reserves. Also, I take this copy of reserves because it allows me either to play it for 3 food, getting another population going, or just using it for resources. Both of those things I think would be quite nice for me. I have the Silk Road bonus, so a reserves 1 is basically like a reserves 2 if I can use it for the bonus. Then Engineering Genius of course could be interesting, but I do think, especially with me still being on Bronze Mines, it's not certain that I will find a nice way to use it. I will draw 2 cards. I take the Strength from Saladin, otherwise I again would have been in danger of an aggression. This time I actually could have taken the Civil action, because I will actually draw a Colonization card, but that might be nice to maybe at the next turn then being able to take the Civil action without necessarily having to do any investments into the military. Ciufile this turn will finish the St. Peter's Basilica, takes this first copy of cannon, uses Gutenberg, uses the Frugality to increase his population. Now it's Eske's turn, he cedes. There's no strength event, sadly instead the Knowledge of the Ancients. Sadly, because that means that thanks to the 2 additional signs, Eske will actually be able to go for Iron already this turn, which I think is a big boost for him. Maybe he was also the one who seeded the event, otherwise he would have had to wait. But now, sadly, that event is opened, and it really allows him to accelerate his economical development. He will increase his population, takes the breakthrough for 1 civil action, which is a very nice deal, especially if you're out at low in science. Now it is my turn. As you can see, I actually seed a Good Harvest into the deck, because I definitely wanted to push an event, as there is the Reign of Terror coming, which I was somewhat unhappy about putting it into the deck, but with Ciufile not getting stronger at his last turn, I now actually have the chance to get this Reign of Terror out of the deck before Ciufile maybe will get stronger again, or maybe I will even get weaker, depending on what my plan is with Saladin. So I was hoping for the Reign of Terror to be revealed. Sadly, instead, it's the Rebellion, which will cost me 2 civil actions, which is definitely not great, especially with the additional civil actions. I could have maybe taken some more yellow cards, and especially with the Silk Road bonus, that is definitely some value to miss out on, so I was a bit unhappy about this Rebellion being revealed. There's no coal on the row this turn, so instead I made a decision to go for Iron here. Of course, if coal will be available very quickly afterwards, maybe it could have been worth it to wait, but I just want to use my civil actions to get some production going, and maybe I can further increase my production by going for the railroad or something. So I just think I want to use this turn to get some production going now, instead of speculating on the coal being available soon. And I can go for 1 upgrade using the Ridgeland with the Silk Road bonus. I could just go for a 2nd upgrade. Maybe that could be fine, playing it civil action efficient. But I will actually, at the end of my turn, now that I've drawn this colonization card, I will take the civil action from Saladin, meaning I will have 7 civil actions available. And with that, I was at the end willing to take this breakthrough. That might score me 4 science with the Silk Road bonus. I miss out on 1 resource from not getting the upgrade done yet. But I was still willing to pay that price and get a breakthrough, but with 2 additional civil actions, I maybe could have gone for another upgrade and then maybe taken a Frugality or an Urban Growth or something. I will take the civil action from Saladin. When I take the strength, I'm still the weakest. I can now defend against an aggression. I will even draw another colonization card, also the Ravages of Time, which I was happy to see, as it means that the Silk Road from me won't get destroyed. Also, I pushed a Good Harvest into the deck, which I was not too happy about, especially Eske might get a lot out of it, but now maybe I should have just pushed the reds. I was just a bit worried that, especially if the deck is moving quickly, maybe it prevents me from going for selective breeding or something, and I was hoping that at the time when the Good Harvest will be revealed, maybe I have already some selective breedings running, but of course if it is revealed more quickly, it could turn out to be a bad event. Maybe I could put the reds into the deck and hold the selective breedings off a little bit, but at the end I was hoping that there will be some time passing until it will be revealed, and that I have a chance to have a nice Good Harvest then. I didn't want to push the Prosperity, because that might give Ciufile a lot with having the St. Peter's Basilica, and also the Crusades, with me being weakest at the moment, didn't seem to be the best event to push. Ciufile will actually offer me a promise of military protection here, allowing myself to get 4 additional strength. I had to think about if I really want to give him an additional culture while me missing out on 1, but with me having knowledge that the Reign of Terror is coming, I just felt like that might increase my chances of maybe avoiding that Reign of Terror. Maybe Ciufile will now just build a knight, copy the medieval army tactic, or get stronger in some other way, but maybe he also, if he didn't see any strength events himself, maybe doesn't border that much, and maybe there's just a chance that I can avoid the Reign of Terror after having lost a population to the enslave. I do think it would be quite strong if I managed to avoid getting hit by that event. So at the end I was willing to accept, even though maybe Ciufile might now get stronger anyway, might be able to lose the Reign of Terror anyway, but I was hoping that maybe that can make a difference and can help me avoiding that event. ciufile will use Gutenberg again, actually takes the rifleman for 3 civil actions, which is expensive, but he has 3 warriors, so having the rifleman is, I think, quite important. But as you can see, he stays on 9 strength, meaning that if now some events are revealed after his turn, I might be able to dodge the Reign of Terror actually. The first event revealed is not a Reign of Terror, but it's a very similar one. The barbarians will cause ciufile to lose a population, so that's definitely good news for me. Eske is low in science still, will take the revolutionary idea. Interestingly, takes the journalism for 2 instead of the scientific method for 1. He has the vast territory, has some additional yellow tokens, has already 3 farms going, and with that maybe thinks that he has enough population to easily afford 2 journalisms, and with that is willing to go for that. Maybe even Darwin could be a very interesting leader for him. There's Fleming in age 3. There could have been also some support for the labs, and those would have been available for cheaper, but Eske actually makes the decision, especially maybe also with slowly falling behind in culture a little bit, to go for the journalisms and not go for a pure economical setup with the scientific method. Could have also taken Shakespeare in the opera instead of the revolutionary idea. I push here. I think now I did push the prosperity, as maybe ciufile won't go for more happy faces, hopefully, and then I just was hoping that it can be a somewhat fine event. I still wasn't willing to commit to the reds, as those could potentially be bad. Maybe I should have just pushed the reds, but maybe the prosperity is relatively safe. Sadly, there's no Reign of Terror revealed, instead the Pestilence, which also will cost ciufile another population, but of course everyone will lose a population now, and I kind of would have hoped to see the Reign of Terror here. I have a free population at least, so it doesn't hurt me immediately, while ciufile will not lose 2 population at the beginning of his turns. He has 1 free one, but has to lose another thing, and I do think those population losses are definitely hurting his position, so I was happy to see this. I was hoping that maybe the Reign of Terror could have hit him now, and then afterwards the Pestilence, that of course could have been really bad for him. I will this turn go for another mine upgrade. I will complete my mine upgrades. That also gets me out of corruption. After that I have 5 civil actions left. And now, one thing that I did here was to play the reserves for food and increase my population. Because one thing that I had to ask myself is, how do I want to fight for that Reign of Terror? Because of course I could just take the strength from Saladin here. The thing is, if I do this, maybe it could be a hint towards ciufile that there is actually something bad coming, and then he has a very easy solution to avoid that he's the weakest, and that is to cancel the pact. And with that, I instead made a decision to take the civil action from Saladin, because first of all that's giving me some safe value, the civil action, and I was hoping that maybe ciufile won't push, and with me taking the civil action, staying the weakest, I can maybe play some mind games. Maybe he thinks that there is nothing bad coming, and then isn't willing to increase his strength, and afterwards maybe he still gets hit by the Reign of Terror. So I at the end will take the civil action, but if I am then at the risk of getting hit by the Reign of Terror, which I would be anyway, even if I take the strength from Saladin, as ciufile might just cancel the pact, then I think it's important to make sure that I have a free population, so I increase my population here with playing the reserves, and I'm now down to 0 food. Then I have 3 civil actions left, and I made the decision to take this copy of Rifleman. First of all, that makes it that Eske doesn't have access to this copy of Rifleman, and also maybe I can go for it at some point for some upgrades, maybe be prepared for H3 tactics. They are maybe not the most important cards for me to take here, so I felt like the Rifleman is maybe the most meaningful thing I can get. I could also go for Organized Religions, but there's another copy coming down the road, and the other players don't have any big happy face issues at the moment, so maybe I have a chance to even get one of those copies for 1 civil action at the next turn. And then with the last civil action, I just take Patriotism. I could have also developed the Rifleman, gone for some upgrades, but every time I get stronger, maybe it just intensifies ciufile to cancel the pact, making me the weakest again afterwards. And so I was thinking that maybe my better hope is to actually stay weaker now, make ciufile less suspicious, take the civil action, and do not invest anything unnecessary, and maybe still have then afterwards, because of the signs and indications that I'm sending to ciufile, maybe still have a shot at not being the weakest and trying to avoid the Reign of Terror. At the end of my turn, I will keep some events in the 2 colonization cards. He will draw 2 aggressions and also the Napoleonic army tactic. If I get the cavalryman and the cannons, maybe that could be interesting. Ciufile makes the decision to lose the warrior from the double population loss. Had of course 1 free population. Will go for this constitutional monarchy this turn, getting a boost to civil and military actions. Will interestingly go for Darwin. Has a religion for now, but even when electing Darwin has no happy face issues. Goes for upgrading a warrior to a rifleman. Elects Darwin, develops the printing press before with Gutenberg, takes the efficient upgrade, was hoping that he will just stay at 8, but of course he will copy the tactic and is now at 10 strength, so sadly he did get stronger even now when I didn't bother about taking the strength from Saladin, meaning that if Eske now cedes, there's the danger that I might get hit by the Reign of Terror. Eske cedes, and sadly the Reign of Terror is revealed. I mean, I was weakest for a while, so sadly that is what I have to expect. There were some chances that maybe I could have dodged it, but at the end I will lose the population, but at least I have a free one available as I did prepare for it. Eske will this turn go for the journalisms, can only build 1. It could have been the advantage with the scientific method that he could have gone for 2 upgrades immediately, but in the long run those journalisms will be very nice to have and will allow it that Eske doesn't fall behind in culture that much. Now it is my turn. I actually made the decision to seed the rats into the deck because the selective breedings are not inside. Eske has some food saved up. If maybe there's an interesting order of good harvest and the rats, maybe he could even lose quite a bunch of food. So yeah, now it's of course a bit awkward with both good harvest and rats being the same deck, but I think now the rats could potentially be a very strong event for me with the selective breedings being late. If some selective breedings would have been available, I might have just gone for 2 upgrades here, keeping the rats in hand, but those are not available, and so I pushed now the rats into the deck. I also know what event is on top, that's the last Confucius event. And this turn the question is how to spend my civil action effectively now that I can't go for some food upgrades. First of all, I will take this organized religion. Having a happy face solution will be quite important. And it will be especially important for the thing that I will actually want to do this turn, and that is to invest my civil action somehow nicely with going for the Kremlin. When I go for an upgrade from religion to organized religion, I will have enough happy faces, even when I get this unhappy face from the Kremlin. I have the chance to take this engineering genius for only 1 civil action, and getting 4 resources for 1 civil action is a very strong deal. I have some resources that I want to spend. Of course, I could hope for some other wonders, but I do think the Kremlin is perfectly fine here, especially after I lose Saladin. The Kremlin will make sure that I stay on 7 civil actions, going with a very comfortable amount of civil actions into age 3. I will generate a bit more culture, making it that I don't fall behind ciufile too much. So I felt the Kremlin is a very nice thing to invest into, especially with having the engineering, with having the masonry. Maybe I can even finish the Kremlin and still go for another wonder potentially. But yeah, I also just want to invest my civil actions this turn, and no other wonders available, and I do think the Kremlin is a perfectly fine wonder here. For my last 2 civil actions, I thought about either going for organized religion to get out of corruption already, or to maybe build 2 steps of the Kremlin. I think both decisions could potentially be fine. At the end, I actually took the navigation and developed it with the breakthrough with the Silk Road bonus. From the next 3 H1 events, there's actually only 1 that I don't have knowledge about, because I've seeded a good harvest in the reds. That 1 event is from Eske. And I was thinking that from Eske's perspective, with him having Isabella, it definitely could have made some sense to maybe seed a colony in there. And with that, and with me having some spare science anyway, I felt like the navigation could be a strong technology. Maybe Eske has committed to some colonies that I now have better chances to win. And it also makes me the strongest instead of the weakest without having to take the strength from Saladin. Of course, Reign of Terror is out now, but I felt like with me having some spare science anyway, that's an interesting investment. And so instead of upgrading to an organized religion, which would have cost me 2 civil actions to execute, I will get out of corruption with building 2 steps of the Kremlin with the masonry, which only uses 1 civil action, giving myself the freedom to actually go for this navigation play. Of course, maybe there's no colony coming, but still, having 2 additional strength while me having a decent amount of science available anyway, I think is not bad. And then it's the end of my turn. I will discard the aggressions, and I draw the international agreement, the classic army tactic. So now I only would need a copy of Cavalryman. The thing is that the copy of Cavalryman that is coming down the road is actually the last one, so I was hoping that that one won't be taken away. Ciufile will go for coal, goes for an upgrade, starts his resource production upgrades, take Richland, Opera, and the architecture. I was happy that he didn't take this urban growth, because that would have meant that the cavalryman will actually be discarded before my turn, but the architecture of course could be a technology that will have a lot of potential for him. Eske seeds and a good harvest is revealed, so he will gain some additional food, sadly more than me, but maybe it's also not too bad. He will play the revolutionary idea, goes for the Republic, goes for the Suez Canal. He has one colony already. If he has a strong one from H2 in hand, the Suez Canal might be a very strong wonder for him. He will increase his population, but only once, because then, to get out of corruption, he will build the second journalism, which I think makes a lot of sense, even though it means that he can't finish the Suez Canal at the next turn. The problem for him is that he could get punished quite a bit if the rats are revealed. The rats are among the next two events, so I was really hoping that if I push now, that maybe no, I could hit the rats, or if not, maybe a cheap colony or maybe a strength event. And with that, I kind of wanted to see. The problem is I don't have some really nice events in hand that I want to push, because I was not too confident at this point to actually be stronger on the long run in the next event deck, because I sadly just missed out on the cavalryman, meaning I very likely won't have access to any H2 tactic in the next few turns. I think I will take the strategy that is coming down the row, but as soon as ciufile decides that maybe it's a bit problematic that I have this 4 additional strength, he can cancel the pact and I will be quite weak. So I didn't like it, but at the end I did make the decision to push the Crusades into the deck, as I just wanted to push, as it would be really strong if the rats are revealed. If the rats are not revealed, then at least I can increase my population also once, so that has some benefit. Maybe the ideal scenario would actually, if I now see the rats are not revealed, I increase my population and then ciufile will reveal the rats. He also would lose 6 food at the moment, but even if it hits now, my opponents will just lose a lot more food than I do, so I really wanted to push here. I see the Crusades. There are no rats revealed, instead a scientific breakthrough, which gives a very similar amount of science to everyone. I this turn will use the engineering genius to finish the Kremlin. Afterwards I will first of all go for James Watt. I still have to go for the selective breeding. It's really late, it's the last turn in H2, and James Watt is just a very nice transitional leader. I can save 2 science and 4 resources when I go for my 2 farm upgrades, and then of course with James Watt, especially also in 3-player games where there are 2 copies of oil for 3 players, there's always the chance that you maybe get a bit lucky and an early oil is revealed and you can upgrade it extremely cheaply. So maybe it's not the ideal leader, but I think it's very fine and probably the one that I would have preferred. Maybe even if Nobel would have been available, I think maybe I would have gone for James Watt at the end. I will elect James Watt here. I have to fix my uprising issue. I will do that with actually building an organized religion, because soon the prosperity is coming. I will need this additional temple soon anyway, as I will lose 2 yellow tokens, and then I thought that I can just build the additional temple now, getting a bit more culture production compared to upgrading, and also 1 more food when the prosperity will be revealed. But if I want to play my turn like this, I have an issue, because I can't take both selective breeding and strategy. And so I actually made the decision to not take the selective breeding and instead develop the strategy. There is another copy of selective breeding coming, so I was just hoping that I will be able to get that, but there is of course a chance that it will get hate drafted. And I was a bit worried about that, but there are 2 copies of mechanized agriculture. Maybe I get lucky and one of those will be available. It's definitely a risk, but I didn't want to miss out on the strategy, especially with me having missed out on the cavalryman and not knowing that I will get the last copy of cannon. I think it's important that I get this additional strength, the additional military actions, because if my opponents instead get those things could definitely get quite dangerous for me. So I was willing to take that risk. I could have also played a different turn, allowing myself to take both cards, but at the end I just was hoping that there will be no denial, that I can go for selective breeding and be fine. I will draw some cards, another colonization card, so I was really hoping that maybe at some point a colony will be coming. Truthfully, I was very happy to see that he goes for this copy of selective breeding, because if he would have been willing, he could have just spent 1 more civil action with Darwin and deny myself that copy, but I was very happy to see that he doesn't do it. Now I just have to hope that Eske won't go for the denial, and then I will be able to go for some food upgrades. Truthfully will increase his population, builds the knights, reveals the conquistadors tactic, making him actually the strongest, and then develops the bread and circuses. There's Pierre in the game, and he at some point might need a happy face solution for Darwin. Sadly, Eske doesn't see it, meaning the reds stay in the deck and the chance that Eske might lose 11 food, which definitely could be a setback for him, is now gone. Now the question is, how many times will he increase his population this turn? He will first of all go for Nobel, now being at even 8 science production, having a strong economical setup. The architecture will work very nicely with him still wanting to finish the Suez Canal, and as you can see, sadly he will increase his population 3 times, gets out of corruption then with building a step of the Suez Canal, and now instead of 11 he will only lose 2 food if the reds are revealed. So I was a bit unhappy about the reds staying in the deck, about none of my opponents seeding, or maybe it being revealed when I seeded during my turn, because now Eske has a bunch of additional population that he otherwise maybe wouldn't have had. Interestingly, he doesn't take the team sports, so he might end up without a happy face solution, and I think we have seen this from him in some other games, that he found himself in a position where he had issues because of happy faces and was a bit dependent on solutions in H3. Maybe he doesn't bother too much about it, but especially with Bear in the game, team sports seems to be a very important pickup, but maybe he wasn't willing to have corruption for it, or maybe to have some food saved up for potential reds. But interesting that he doesn't go for it. Maybe he will get a colony for the Suez, which will grant him a lot of yellow tokens or maybe some happy faces. I this turn will seed again an event that I was not too comfortable pushing the international agreement. I could have already pushed it the turn before instead of the Crusades, but I do think while sometimes the international agreement doesn't do that much, there is always the potential that it will just be extremely game altering and really allowing a player to just boost his position in a very big way. So it's not a card that I want to seed into the deck if there is a chance that maybe one of my opponents could take big advantage of it. But here I really wanted to push because I want to use my civil actions this turn to get my farm upgrades in, and with that I need to get the reds out of the way, and I didn't draw any other events, so I pushed the international agreement here. The reds are revealed. Ciufile at least will still lose 5 food, but that could have been a bit more, especially for Eske. Then I will go for the selective breeding. I will go for 2 upgrades, take the efficient upgrade and a copy of reserves, having some more yellow cards for the Silk Road. The efficient upgrade could be nice, either when there is maybe computers coming, maybe oil. That of course is something that I was really hoping towards, that maybe an early oil could be available in the row and that I can go into with James Watt at the next turn, but also computers could be interesting. There's some interesting leader support with Bill Gates, Einstein, Marie Curie being there, and so I took the efficient upgrade. Worst case, I can use it for an upgrade to organized religion, and the reserves is also a very fine card to have. Other things that I could have considered was to either take the cannons, but I have a tactic where I need the cannons, the Napoleonic army tactic, but I have the classic army, meaning I just need to hope towards tanks, and I have a tactic that I can work with, so I was not willing to pay 3 civil actions for the cannons. There might be rockets available also relatively soon. And then there's also a copy of Democracy, and if you take a look at my science, I actually have enough science to develop that at the next turn. But afterwards I would be quite low in science. I still might relatively desperately military tech. It wouldn't work nicely if there's an early oil in the row or early computers, as then I have invested 3 civil engines into it without maybe wanting to go for it immediately, and so at the end I let it be on the row. Maybe there's a chance that Eske will go for it, but at least he has already the Republic, so it's not a best upgrade for him, and maybe there's a chance to just get it for cheaper at the next turn. I will keep my 2 tactics, my colonization cards. I draw 2 aggressions and the impact of government. That could be interesting, especially if I go for an H3 government form. I can maybe make that a strong impact. Ciufile seeds in the arms industry is revealed, giving Ciufile 4 and Eske 2 additional resources. He will destroy a mine. Goes for an opera, will sadly now have more happy faces, meaning that the prosperity that is coming will benefit him a little bit more. He goes for a farm upgrade, will be able to go for a new population at the next turn with the prosperity even for 2 more population, but he actually was willing to destroy one of his mines, so he also goes for a bit of a greedy line, doing those investments into the opera, destroying a mine for it, now being stuck on 4 resource production. Could definitely backfire, but he is definitely at the moment running away with the culture. But he also didn't take those air forces. Eske offers the international trade agreement to Ciufile, giving Ciufile an additional resource production, so sadly now Ciufile has a bit more production again, while Eske gets an additional food production. He will develop the architecture, finishes the Suez Canal, and as we can see, he draws some cards, And that's of course a clear indicator that he got a strategic territory, which I do think is quite a strong colony to get if you are already in H3 when you are finishing the Suez Canal, because getting 5 H3 draws can be extremely valuable. Maybe he has some wars, some tactics in hand, maybe he has drawn some strong impacts that he can work towards. And as we can see, he also will now go for a very clear plan on how he wants to approach H3. He will take the spaceflight, he will take the cannons, and he will take Einstein. He has Nobel, there will be Nobel Prizes, he can maybe go for Einstein already the next turn, start scoring Nobel Prizes, start making that spaceflight big, and while he is behind in culture for now, that clear plan might definitely allow him to catch up relatively quickly. We can also see that he is willing to make some sacrifices in order to go for that, because he is also not taking the air forces, making it that this card is available for only one civil action for me. So that's definitely a sacrifice, but maybe now with the additional strength also from the strategic territory, he felt relatively safe. So now that we are at the beginning of H3, we can also maybe take a quick look at the overview. And we can see that ciufile has probably the worst economical situation, has only 6 civil actions, at least has Darwin, but has 5 resource production, or at least with the pact, so he doesn't have a bad economical position, but probably the worst one. But he has the culture lead, is running away with the culture at the moment. I may be in the middle, I have maybe the second best economy, 7 civil actions. I have the potential that if an early oil is revealed, that my position, my economy could just go through the roof, maybe also with an early computers being revealed. So I think I have a solid position, I have a bit of a culture lead before Eske, but still some economical benefits or upsides compared to ciufile. And then we have Eske, who is a bit behind in culture, but as I just said, he has now a very clear plan on how he maybe can catch up some culture, has 8 resource production, 8 science production, has some population available that for now is unhappy, but if he gets pro sports at some point, then I think he has definitely not a bad position. But at the moment, I think everything is possible, every player still has chances to win. Now it's my turn, I make the decision to not push. I actually instead cancel the promise of military protection. Of course, that could potentially still be nice, but I will this turn go for the democracy. I would have stayed weakest anyway, I can defend against aggressions anyways, and with that I just thought now I want to get my culture reduction back, reducing the amount of culture reduction from ciufile by a little bit. There are no computers in the row, meaning I could have potentially just gone for some computer upgrades, and if I don't go for computers, it could definitely be that those will be available for Eske, and if he goes for Einstein, that could just give me an even bigger science boost, making it that he might be able to score a Nobel Prize every turn and make his spaceflight very big. But it's also just a bit costly, and I can go for democracy while taking a revolutionary idea, making it that I afterwards still have a decent amount of science, and that I think is just too strong for myself, and I can't allow myself to take the computers for 3 here. So I go for the democracy, I will increase my population, that gets me out of corruption. I take the air forces, I take the revolutionary idea, I take the patriotism. Maybe instead of increasing my population, I could have considered upgrading my religion to organized religion, as that would have meant to get more food out of the prosperity. I'm not sure if I maybe missed out on that option. I think maybe I just went for increasing my population as a way to get out of corruption. That cost me 3 resources. I think that wouldn't have been enough. And now I rather wanted to just take a bunch of cards, patriotism, to be more safe for the military, because without having those military techs, there are no tanks available. I'm definitely a bit vulnerable in case one of my opponents will try something with the military. And for my last 2 civil actions, I kinda just wanted to take reserves, because ideally I will just get tanks and then be safe with the classic army, and then I have the reserves in hand for even more resources or food depending on what I need. But I just felt that it maybe could be a bit too greedy, because the first copy of tanks could be taken away, the second one could be late, or maybe then denied by the second opponent. So I don't know. I could definitely also draw an H3 tactic that operates on rockets and infantry, entrenchments, or positional army, and I just felt a bit safer. Maybe my opponents have to fear that I have the defensive army tactic in hand or the fortifications, so I just maybe am able to threaten a bit more strength, because, for example, if Eske gets a copy of military theory at his next turn, then who knows if he has drawn a war, and he has drawn a bunch of cards thanks to the strategic territory, then it could definitely be a little bit dangerous, especially if he maybe has a tactic like mobile artillery, even if he misses out on that copy of Air Force. So instead of the reserves at the end went with the rockets, but maybe I could also play it a bit more greedily and go for the reserves here. I go for the democracy. I think the boost in civil actions and culture is just very strong, and also I have an impact that synergizes with it. I actually draw some new tactics, the modern army and the mechanized army tactic. There is now a copy of oil coming down the row. Maybe at the next turn I can still go for some oil upgrades, as maybe even then go for Marie Curie if those cards are still available for me at my next turn. Ciufile seeds and the prosperity is revealed. Here will this turn increases population, builds a library, builds another library. Both of them will produce him 2 culture thanks to Darwin. He will take Pierre in hand, not electing him and maybe using him for the Olympic Games later on. He is again playing it a bit greedily, spending a lot of resources, but at the moment Eske will now miss out on this copy of Air Forces. Military theories are not on the row yet, so maybe it's fine to play it greedily and just make sure to get an even bigger culture lead going. But if Eske maybe still wants to make a switch to a more military heavy strategy, truthfully could get punished for maybe investing many resources, passing the reserves. But if he doesn't get punished, maybe that is actually also the key to how he might be able to win the game at the end. And with Eske missing out in air forces and with me not having the most repopulation, maybe it is indeed a position where he can be somewhat safe. Eske seeds, and I was not too happy about those crusades because that is now quite a big swing between me and Eske. I lose 4 culture, Eske gains 4, so I would have kind of wished that it is not in the deck. I still think it was the right decision to put it into the deck, because those reds being revealed would have been just very big if Eske would have lost the 11 food. But now, of course, it's not really great. I am now already... the culture lead that I'm having gets less big, the difference to Truthfully gets even bigger, so I was not too happy about that there was the need to put this event into the deck earlier. Eske will go for Einstein. He has enough science so that he can start scoring some Nobel Prizes. He will develop the cannons, builds one, goes for computers, goes for an upgrade, is now at 13 science production, takes the reserves, the urban growth, and goes for an upgrade to his farms to get out of corruption while not getting into the next area of consumption. So he is now really in a position where he indeed might be able to score a Nobel Prize every turn, and it will result in a lot of culture. We can see that at the end of his turn he will actually already have overtaken me, and I have to see if I can keep up with that. But the good news are that there is actually this copy of oil coming down the row right next to Marie Curie, so that gives me at least a strong option to set myself up now. First of all, I will push the impact of government, because I might need a bunch of strong impacts in there to allow myself to score the necessary points at the end. So I start with seeding the impact of government, even though of course I might get punished by some potential strength events. But there's no strength event revealed, instead of freedom of movement, which allows myself to actually do something interesting, because I will put a swordsman into this 3rd farm. And I actually can do that with the James Watt discount, meaning that it only costs me 1 resource to remove the swordsman. I will rebuild the swordsman, but at least it doesn't cost me a civil action, but only a military action. And it will actually even help me to get out of corruption. So I do think I can do something interesting here. And the additional farm could be especially interesting, because there's a red cross coming. Also, I will now go for this oil, I will go for Marie Curie, I will have good science, resource production, so in case there's something like impact of balance, then, and also of course agriculture, the farm could also be helpful for some impacts. Of course, we are already now maybe in the middle of age 3 or at the early middle of age 3, but I was hoping that maybe there will be 3 more turns after this, and then then I was hoping that some additional production could still be quite nice. So I will go for the oil, I will go for a bunch of upgrades, I will go for Marie Curie. When I elect her, I also will gain 5 culture thanks to James Watt leaving play. I have now 12 culture production, 15 resource production, 8 science production. I take the movies in hand. I do think it's extremely important to have something in hand to invest all of those resources into that I'm now generating. Sadly, I don't really have the civil actions to take a wonder. I thought about just taking the internet, but if I don't get a chance to invest into the right urban buildings, that could be a bit bad. Also, maybe it focuses, or I commit a little bit on the way that I want to score some culture. And so I thought maybe just keeping myself prepared for Red Cross or fast food chains is fine as well, if that means that I actually have this copy of movies in hand for certain and that I can take it for 1 civil action here. With the remaining 2 civil actions, I made a decision to increase my population, rebuild the swordsman, and use the efficient upgrade to upgrade the religion to organized religion, having more happy faces now, and making it that the next bunch of population that I will be getting will be happy. Thanks to the revolutionary idea, I could potentially start building some movies already the next turn, unless of course I have to be worried about my military. I will keep a bunch of tactics and colonization cards in hand. I was really hoping towards some good impacts. There might be some that I could really score very good in, and maybe I need to hope for something like this. I do draw an impact, the impact of population, but sadly that isn't really looking good at the moment, especially Eske has a lot better impact of population than I do, and even if I get some more population out with my third farm, it's still a bad impact for me. Ciufile offers me the military alliance. I of course gladly accept this and get some additional strength going. He will take the military theory, thanks to Darwin, only for 2 civil actions, takes the Manhattan Project and also the efficient upgrade. Now it's Eske's turn. He will see it, and another event is revealed that I ideally wouldn't have even liked to put into the deck, but to get the rats out of the way I was willing to do it. But sadly, the consequences of that event might be even worse than the Crusades. Not necessarily because Eske has now the chance to take some cards, but that already is also quite strong for him. But him now taking this international agreement at the end might be the difference between the game ending a turn earlier or not, because now he will, as you can see, take 3 cards out of this international agreement, reserves, professional sports, and the revolutionary idea. And then he will go for bro sports, build another journalism, build a bro sports, take tanks, take engineering genius, takes the modern infantry, develops the modern infantry, doesn't go for an upgrade, instead rather wants to go draw 3 cards, is willing to take 2 food corruption. And with him taking even a bunch more cards from the row, after already having taken some from the international agreement, out of the sudden there are only 12 cards left at the beginning of my turn, meaning it is definitely possible that the age will already end very quickly, and that doesn't really allow myself to convert the many resources that I'm now producing into some strong culture reduction, and also gives me maybe 1 less draw and 1 less chance to put a potentially nice impact into the deck. So I was very unhappy about how both the Crusades and the international agreement turned out for me. The good news is, at least, that Eske has taken the international agreement. He can't play politics at his next turn, so despite him being at 30 strength, I don't have to be concerned about wars or aggressions at all, at least for 1 turn. So that's at least something. I can focus on just maybe scoring the most culture possible, but I definitely have to expect that the age might be ending already then before my turn after my next one. Sadly, I can't really use my politics phase, which definitely hurts, as I might need maybe some nice impacts in order to win this game. But at least, thanks to Marie Curie and the 12 culture production I'm having, I'm still somewhat on par with Eske. I'm behind ciufile, but I will now get a strong wonder. ciufile only will get the Manhattan Project, but he will also get the Olympic Games, so I might need some strong impacts in order to stay in the game here. This turn was the big question on which wonder do I want to go for. I can take the red cross, and if I'm willing to play the reserves for food, I can even build 4 steps immediately. Or I can take the fast food chains, not build it yet, and then finish it at the next turn. I sadly can't go for both wonders. I'm missing 1 civil action. If I would have 1 civil action more, I could have taken and finished the fast food chains and afterwards taken the red cross, but sadly I'm missing 1 civil action to do that. And now, my first ideas rather played around the fast food chains, because I can go for the fast food chains and then I can go for 1 movie, potentially even for 2 movies, which maybe could be a bit greedy, but as said, Eske doesn't, or can I go for 2 movies? I'm not sure. I think I was missing the civil actions then, if I remembered correctly. I mean, I need to play the revolutionary idea, develop the movies, build a movie, increase my population, build a movie. I think I can build 2 movies, but then I can't take the reserves, meaning I can't build those 2 movies and then at the next fast food chain, next on the fast food chains. But I am very inflexible. I don't have an impact to work with at the moment. I might still draw 1 and staying a little bit flexible to maybe be able to actually prepare for this impact, which might result in more points at the end, could potentially be beneficial. So I definitely thought a lot about just going for fast food chains, building either 1 or maybe even 2 movies, depending on how much I already want to commit this turn. And At the end, I went for the red cross. First of all, the red cross will likely score me more points against Eske than the fast food chains. The fast food chains will at the end be, I think, 21 or 22 culture. For the red cross, I will build 4 stages now, so 24 culture plus 2 colonies, 26 culture. And then this last step will likely be built by ciufile, meaning against Eske I actually gain more points out of the red cross than I would than I would be able to get from the fast food chains. Additionally, with not investing into movies right now, I have the ability to go for a Nobel Prize at the next turn, meaning I will score 4 additional culture from there. And also, I was not spending resources to finish my wonder. Of course, I have a lot of resource production, but that allows myself potentially the next turn to even build 3 movies instead of only building 2. So while I miss out on some culture production now, I might be able to build an additional movie at the next turn and compared to what I would have been able to do with the fast food chains, and I will get a Nobel Prize. And with that, I at the end went for the red cross, leaving myself a bit more flexible on depending on what impact I draw. Maybe I can do some adjustments. If not, I can just build 3 movies, which might be strong, and get more points against Eske. It's the question if it's the right call. Eske, with having the spaceflight Einstein, with having had some additional draws from the strategic territory, maybe has a strong position. Maybe I should rather even concentrate against ciufile, but he also squared a bit of culture ahead. Eske has the even more threatening position in the standings, so at the end I went for the red cross here, but it's a really close call, and maybe something with fast food chains could also be the right approach. So I play first of all the revolutionary idea. I want to use that one for the Silk Road bonus, as it's enough for me if I play the reserves for 3 food, and I think I would have played the reserves anyway. I will then build 4 steps of the red cross, I will take the reserves and then end my turn. Then I play the classic army tactic just in case I need it. Maybe the age doesn't end before my next turn, maybe there will be another turn, maybe I have to be prepared for wars. Of course then I would be able to keep the classic army tactic anyway, but I just thought it's nice to have it revealed and I can copy back to fighting band at the next turn. I then will draw another colonization card, a war and a tactic, and I was a bit unhappy that sadly I don't draw any impact here, and that could make it a bit more difficult for me to catch up to the others, and I might need to hope that maybe they actually put some impacts in there that are at least somewhat beneficial for me as well. ciufile seats, the event revealed as the Independence Declaration. I'm the weakest, but I don't have any colony. ciufile will go for the civil service, develops it, goes for the democracy, builds 1 step of my red cross, finishing the wonder, takes the military build-up, the rockets, and also elects Pierre to then play the reserves resources. After the game, ciufile actually mentioned in the chat that he missed out on Eske not being able to play any politics because of the international agreement that he took the turn before. So ciufile maybe played the turn more safely than he needed to, which potentially might cost him some points at the end. So that was one thing that he missed out on, and it's definitely also an easy thing to miss, as there's no reminder or anything. You just have to think about it or not forget it. Now it's Eske's turn. He can't play any politics. He takes the endowment, develops the cavalryman, scores even also some culture with the Colosseum. He has really gotten some nice culture out of the Colosseum. Developed knights, cavalryman, modern infantry might now be able to go for tanks. Builds a religion, builds another religion. He doesn't take another technology in hand, which potentially could be a bit bad, as he wants to develop as many as possible, but there's still a bunch of technologies coming down the road. Now before the final turn, and the age will end now before my turn, we can see that I'm actually a bit in the lead, but I have already finished my wonder, while Eske will get a big space flight still. ciufile will get the Olympic Games, the Manhattan Project. I can build 3 movies potentially, which is strong, but I don't have an impact to play, and I was not feeling too good about my chances, but depending on what impacts there are coming, maybe if somehow a player early on committed to an impact that now out of the sudden is looking good for me, there is definitely hope that maybe I can still finish with a good position in this game. So H4 starts. I will skip my politics phase. I will go for the movies, build 1, increase my population, build another one. I will actually destroy this mine, build another one. that mine the only impact that it hurts is the impact of industry, which I felt like is unlikely to be in there anyway. Truthfully, destroyed actually a mine, has only 4 resource production. Maybe Eske has put it into the deck. He has 8 resource production, but only 6 for the impact of industry. Maybe I need to hope towards something like this, that there's an impact coming that maybe the others for some reason has pushed, but I thought for the impact of industry that's unlikely, and so I was willing to destroy this. I could have instead also played the reserves for food and then build another movie. Or what I then actually thought I would do is play the reserves for food, build a movie, then destroy the mine and actually build an additional swordsman. Or basically I could now play the reserves for food, increase my population, build an additional swordsman and develop one more tech to score a Nobel Prize. That would mean that my impact of competition and especially the impact of harmony would be a bit better for me. But the thing is, I'm in a position where I have to hope towards some good impacts anyway. And the impact of harmony, I mean, against ciufile it's maybe not even that bad, but Eske has a really strong harmony. Maybe I just need to hope that that one isn't in the deck. I might have done it anyway, because maybe there's not the most interesting alternatives to do, but I do think there is actually a very interesting and very strong alternative to do, and that is to go for this military theory and develop it. First of all, scoring myself +1 point for the impact of government that is coming, and maybe also +2 points for potential impact of progress, but those are not the main reasons to go for it. When we take a look at Eske's position, he has the space flight, he has the tanks, and of course he would love it to get another technology, go for another Nobel Prize, go for a big space flight, get 6 more cults from Einstein. But now that I've taken this military theory, which ciufile can't deny because he has already taken one, there is the chance that if ciufile plays along, he potentially could take the mechanized agriculture way and maybe even the fundamentalism, which would remove the ability from Eske to actually go for a Nobel Prize. And that would really cost him a lot of culture. 3 from Einstein, 4 from the Nobel Prize, and then another 3 from the space flight. And if I would leave him the military theory and he then is able to develop that one, that would even give him another +3 for impact of government, +2 for variety, +6 for progress. So that would just be insanely strong for him. And as the position is overall very close as well in this game as in the standings, I was hoping that ciufile will spot this opportunity and then play along and take those technologies away from Eske, as it will cost Eske a lot of culture, which is also in the interest from ciufile, who maybe wants to try, of course, to win this game. So I do think it's extremely important to take the military theory here, because I need to hope towards something good, and potentially Eske not going for a Nobel Prize is maybe one of those good things, which maybe could mean that we are going with a somewhat similar amount of points into the final impacts. Maybe with the impact of government I have a chance to overtake Eske then. Maybe we can hope towards something like an impact of progress, which ciufile might have pushed and which would be good for me against Eske. So I think I need to go for this and just hope that the impact of harmony is not in the deck with not going for this 3rd swordsman. I will copy back to the fighting band, which for now makes me a bit stronger, but probably it won't matter. I actually can't defend against an aggression, but I again am relatively safe, I think, because I potentially could defend against an aggression, and now there will be some Olympic Games. So the turn before there was the international agreement, now there will be the Olympic Games, so that hopefully I don't really have to bother that much about my strength, or won't get punished for not bothering about my strength. The first impact that we are seeing, I was very happy to see, and maybe at the end it wasn't even too bad that I wasn't able to push at my next turn, because this impact I have improved by +9 during my last turn with building the 3 movies. So if I would have pushed, it would have needed to be a very good impact in order to be worth it to make up for the points that I would have lost to this impact being revealed a little bit earlier. So the first impact that we are seeing, which maybe was pushed a little bit earlier by ciufile, I think, is actually a good one, which increased my hopes a little bit. And which increased my hopes even more is that ciufile will indeed go for the denial, which maybe will cost him a little bit of things that he can do during his turn. He will go for an upgrade, improving his impact of balance in industry, builds this bread and circuses, finishes the Manhattan Project, goes interestingly for the military theory. He could have also gone for a Nobel Prize with mechanized agriculture and rockets. Him developing the military theory, I was really hoping might be a sign that he actually could have pushed the impact of progress in there, which could be a very big impact against Eske. He will now not be able to go for a Nobel Prize. There was this impact of architecture revealed, so I was really hoping that maybe the things are just coming together for me. Now it's Eske's turn. He will see the impact of government is revealed. That's a good one for me. It's not that big against ciufile, who just went for the military theory, but it's quite strong against Eske. Eske can play the endowment for 6 culture, develops the tanks, can't go for a second technology, but at least he will get a bonus from the Colosseum. Finishes the spaceflight for 29 points, so a very solid spaceflight, but just missed out in reaching the 30s. He then will go for an upgrade, another upgrade, making himself just the strongest, improving his impact of competition a little bit as well. And then before the final impacts, we can see that it is actually quite close. With Eske missing out on some culture and the impact of architecture and government already being revealed, I'm actually 2 points in front of Eske at the moment and a bit behind ciufile. But I still need some more things coming together for me, because there are definitely impacts that would punish me quite heavily. For example, there could be impact of strength, impact of harmony. Also, some other impacts could be bad, but there are also impacts that could be really nice for me. Maybe somehow someone seeded balance. Impact of progress was really an impact that I was hoping towards, and maybe and to maybe have chances for second place, I could hope towards either something like impact of progress, or maybe if I should finish before ciufile, something like impact of science seeded by Eske, impact of tech seeded by Eske, which is not that big for ciufile and would give me +8 against him. So yeah, I was not too confident that I will be able to win this game, but still have hope, definitely. And I was hoping that maybe with the right impacts, at least I might be able to finish second, but of course winning this game would be extremely important. And so I was really hoping that the impacts now will be kind. The first impact is not that great for me. Maybe we are seeing here why Eske went for those upgrades to his military units, the impact of competition, giving him +13, me only +2. So I'm now already quite behind him again, which is not ideal. And the second impact is the impact of strength. So now it's looking even worse. Eske went stronger. Maybe that is one of his impacts that he has seeded into the deck. Now I'm already quite behind. Now I really need the perfect impacts in order to come back. And the first one of those, oh no, actually not. The next impact is the impact of colonies, giving another +6 to Eske, which is not really great. So it's looking sadly even worse for me now. But now there's an impact that gives me maybe some hope back. The impact of culture, giving me +7 against ciufile, +14 against Eske. But I still have a 10 culture gap to overcome towards ciufile and a 15 culture gap towards Eske. So I would need a really strong impact to be the last impact for me. And the last impact is the impact of science, which actually brings me quite a bit closer to ciufile. But at the end, it's not enough. And yeah. I sadly lose this game, 3 points behind ciufile, who finishes second, and Eske even with a little bit of a lead at the end, despite ciufile and me denying some text to prevent him from getting a Nobel Prize. At the end, he was still with a bit of a lead, managed to win this game. No, so that was quite an exciting finish for me. Overall, of course, it was a bit of a frustrating game for me, especially because of that stupid blunder that I did at the end of H1, where I, for basically no benefit, took an unnecessary risk. Maybe because I have this mindset of not bothering about aggressions when I have 3 military actions and only 1 military or defense card is needed. I then got hit by a double aggression, which was definitely a big setback. With the culture scores being relatively close, it's definitely possible that maybe avoiding that double aggression could have been already enough to maybe have a lot better chances on winning this game. But nonetheless, even after getting hit by those aggressions, I had still some things going. I managed to build up some productions. I got this oil at some point during H3 together with Marie Curie and having the democracy. I was hoping that maybe that strong position could maybe allow myself to score a lot of points. Sadly, because of the international agreement, the age ended a bit earlier, which I think really hurt my potential of scoring a lot of culture. Maybe I would have need to be a bit careful if the age would have been prolonged by 1 turn and Eske wouldn't have accepted the international agreement, or if it wouldn't have been in the deck, because then I would have been to be more careful about aggressions and wars. But if I then would have maybe invested into tanks or something, or rockets, I at least maybe would have scored better into impact of competition and strength potentially. So at the end, sadly, the game then ended relatively quickly. I think it was how many rounds did this game consist of? It was a 17 rounds game, so a relatively short game, and I think maybe I needed another turn or maybe some strong impacts to at least maybe finish at the second position. Eske at the beginning of H3 got those additional draws, maybe already then had some impacts that potentially rewarded the decision of him then going for Einstein in spaceflight, so he had a very clear plan in how to score points in H3, and despite him being behind at the beginning of H3, with that clear plan, he then managed to score enough points to win this game at the end. ciufile played it a bit greedily, went for some big culture reduction, destroyed actually one bronze mine, but yeah, with the game ending relatively quickly, with Eske not having air forces, only being on 3 military actions, me not having military techs and not a tactic that I can easily work with without the tanks, was relatively safe, and sadly I almost managed to overtake him, maybe with some impacts and my strong economy, but he managed to keep the lead and finishes at the second position at the end. Yeah, so definitely, of course, not the outcome of the game that I would have wished for. One big blunder that potentially cost me the game here. So now the question is now, of course, with that a result that's definitely not ideal, how are my chances now going into the two-player games? Do I have still chances? Do I have it in my own hands? How realistic or unrealistic will it be to still win the group? And we will now take a look at that now. And with that result, I sadly don't have it in my own hands any longer, but I also still have chances, and maybe also chances that are not completely unrealistic. Of course, it will now be a very tough tough challenge to still win the group. I definitely need to win all of my 3 two-player games, which would put me at 23 points. And then Eske is only allowed to win 1 game, so assuming that I win all of my 3 two-player games, I also win the one against Eske. And if Eske then just loses one of his other games, and only then wins a total of 1 two-player game, he would be at 22, I would be at 23 points. So if I manage to win all of my 3 two-player games, I do think it's somewhat realistic, especially when we remember the first video of this stage. The Eske didn't have the best rating in two-player games. The other 2 opponents sadly as well, but maybe Eske, being the least experienced in this player account, or maybe the least familiar with, could give myself the hope that if I should manage to actually win the 3 two-player games, which is a big challenge first of all to achieve that, and if that happens, Eske needs to lose 1 game, but then I would be able to still move on to the next round. So there's definitely hope left, but sadly I don't have it in my own hands. It very much reminds me of the stage before, where I was in a similar position. I then actually managed to win all of my 3 two-player games, but sadly it was not enough to win. And this time it's a similar position, but it's maybe a bit more realistic, with Eske only having to lose 1 two-player game if I win my 3 to still be able to win the group. And for ciufile it's similar. He needs to win he already won against Momo, he needs to win his 2 remaining games, and then if Eske only loses 1 game, doesn't win the other 2s against me and Momo, then ciufile would be able to win. So he's basically in the same position as I am, only that he already won one of his 2-player games against Momo. So quite exciting standing. Sadly, it's definitely possible that I might not be able to continue after the stage, but there is still hope left, and with that, of course, I will try my best to get some good results out of those 2-player games. And with that, I say thanks for watching. I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch, and then I will see you in the next video.